All right, cool. So how's it going?
It's going well so far. How about yourself?
It's going. Stuck inside just like everybody else at the moment. So before we went live, you switched your webcam somehow. I'm curious as to how you're using your phone as a webcam right now.
So, just tried it out right now. There's actually two things that you'd have to download. They have a Droid Cam that's available for Android or iOS support, and you can download it off like either Play or whatever the Apple equivalent store is. And then you also download it on your computer, and you can link them over the Wi-Fi in order to wirelessly use it as a webcam. So I just happened to use it because I wanted to see to make sure if it was the lighting, anything, the quality looks much better. So
Yeah,
just
like you
testing it out.
definitely look way more natural, like as opposed to the webcam, where you look like more white, I guess would be
Yeah,
the best way to put it. Um, so yeah, that's cool. Does it like is there resolution limitations on it?
I don't know. I just tried it out today, so I literally was thinking about this earlier, and I was like, you know what? I feel like my phone camera must be way better than this Logitech 720p that I bought probably about 7 years ago. So
Yeah. I
I still have
mean,
to do more testing with it, figure out all the options, and see exactly how it ends up playing out.
well, even still, even if it was at the same resolution, just the colors are like way more natural. So that's
Yeah.
a pretty neat trick. So also, when was the last time you played Overwatch?
Let me open up my Blizzard app and tell you for certain. It's been a minute. I probably the last time I played was like before they introduced Hammond, or even can I see the last time it told me I played?
So you played more in the like heyday of Overwatch when it first came out, when it was like super duper popular, when you know it was arguably better.
Yeah, I played in a different age than where it is now. I mean, where it is at now, I guess not that I don't prefer it, but just that I didn't have time to dedicate to staying like in ranked, so I just kind of like fell out of playing it.
So that was kind of one of the things that I really wanted to kind of pick your brain about and hear how you managed to do it because you made it all the way up to Grandmaster. And correct me if I'm wrong, but you solo queued your way up to Grandmaster.
Yes, it was very annoying. um, Usually I like the solo queue for mostly everything. Like I played probably seasons one through I want to say like six or seven for sure. I have to update the game in order to like say for sure, but actually I'll do that in the meantime and I'll tell you exactly. Um, While that's updating, yeah, I mean I started off. They also changed the ranking system a lot too. Like the first season that you played, they obviously did a lot of adjustments and patch notes in order to make the ranking system a little bit more fair or a little bit less crazy because I believe in the first season you could also do more than one hero per team. Like as in, if
Mm-hmm.
you want to just all be all Lucios or something like that, you could all be that. And then
So
they later changed it.
you could be like literally the whole team as one player.
Yeah, as far as I remember, because I remember doing like some dumb like cheesy stats with that. It was also like you weren't. I don't remember all the. I'm pretty sure it's just bronze, silver, gold, plat, diamond, master, grandmaster, and then top 500 is now the overall like rank scheme. But in the first season, when you queued and played, you got like a number from like one to like 100,
Mm-hmm.
and I believe you couldn't even get the highest you can get in rank one, even though you could technically get, I guess, up to 100. I think like the top rated people were, I want to say 80 something, like 84. And it was very difficult to rank up at that point because you would, very similar, you would play your place in matches, and then at the end of it, you would obviously get whatever your rank would be. I think I ended up as like 56 or something like that, which is equivalent to, I don't know, maybe high plat diamond or something like that. And
Mhm.
it would take like 7 wins to rank up once, and then every time you lose, it would be like a
Everything's
straight level
gone.
down. Yeah,
Oh, that's brutal.
it reminds me of old school like Halo 2 when you used to play ranked online. It would take like 15 wins to rank up once, and then if you lost, you'd straight up lose like two like competitive levels.
So then where were you where was the game when you started like seriously climbing towards Grandmaster?
The next season, I probably started in Grandmaster. I mean, not sorry, not Grandmaster. Fucking Plat,
Hmm.
and
So it just automatically dropped you into plat based on the previous criteria.
yeah. So if I remember correctly, I believe I stayed in Plat for like 2 seasons, and then I like to half blame it on having a really bad computer at the time because I hadn't
That's the
updated.
easiest thing to blame it on.
Yeah, because literally I hadn't updated this PC in probably like, I don't know, a decade because a lot of the time I wasn't home much, so it wasn't really a point. And plus, I didn't really play anything extensive or anything that required a lot of usage, to be honest. So I remember when I actually see my rank system, it will help out a lot more. But I believe I stayed in plat for like 2 or 3 seasons, and then I literally was just like, you know what? I'll probably be home more often. I ended up buying a pre-built PC, as you know,
Hmm.
and things that can actually run on it at 60 frames or 120 frames, as opposed to I was playing on 20 usually, max
20
30. If
20 frames per second.
yeah, it
I
was
don't know that
god
that's even
awful.
acceptable for like console gaming.
No, it's not. Console games are usually based around 30 frames per second, and they
Yeah.
always stay consistent at 30 frames. I was just like, whatever. Like I found
Were
the
you
game
playing on
fun,
like an
so
old school like laptop or something, or
it was
like a
basically like
20-year-old Dell computer?
it was like a 20-year-old Dell computer because I
Oh,
really
that's
haven't used it for
brutal.
like literally anything. I just took it apart actually, and I remember looking up the graphics card just to see if it was like worth, not that it would be worth anything, but just to see how old it was, and
Mhm.
it was it was a relic. I couldn't even find an area where you could
I
even
can
just
only
buy it for like
imagine.
$5. So it was absolutely garbage.
I feel like that the only use for a graphics card like that is to like if you're building a server that require like you just have to have a graphics card just to drive the interface. That's like the only use for it.
Yeah, and I mean at the time too, it was like I was using, it was all outdated. I mean that computer was something like I got as a gift for like my birthday like a long time
Hmm.
ago, and really anything that I used it for was just like for school related work or stuff of
Yeah.
that
So you didn't
nature.
really need it as a gaming PC.
Exactly. So then once I got an actual PC, because now I have a actual one that can run games at more than 5 FPS, you know. But what ended up happening is that I started taking it very seriously this time and play the game. So I didn't even end up maxing out the settings, as you know, because it's better just to have high frames over things that look pretty.
Right.
So obviously you customize the settings to get the highest FPS. Once I was starting to get like 120 FPS, that's when I started to climb. And I don't have a lot of friends that play like Overwatch or played it competitively. So I think like I ended up going and hitting Diamond for my first season, like outside of Plat. And then the next one I hit Master, and then I either hit Master and then Grandmaster in the same season, or I hit Grandmaster the next season. And then I stayed there for 3 seasons. And also because I haven't played this game in like a year and a half, I have a lot of updates. So
Yeah, I think the last time that you played it was probably with me after PAX 2018.
yeah, it's
And
been a minute.
yeah, it's changed a lot since then too. I haven't been keeping up with it, but so when you were actually serious about it, like what was the biggest struggle after you, let's start with the hardware. And what was the biggest struggle as far as the hardware when you said once you started getting up to 120 frames per second, stuff like that? Like what was the difference for you that allowed you to get from, let's say 60 frames per second and then the 120? Like what was the hardware jump and what advantage do you feel like it gave you?
Well, at least for the advantage, I feel like that the game obviously runs a lot smoother. Everything kind of works a lot better. It's way easier to hit scan when things seem like they're moving in some type of pattern over a lot of skippy and jumping that would happen with lower frames. I mean, the hardware, I don't remember exactly um, what the original was.
Mhm.
I have to look up. I'm sure I have it somewhere because I literally took it out and hold on one second.
Sure. I can take a moment to say hello to the people that are actually in chat right now and say thank you for hanging out. And this will also be available on Spotify and YouTube in a few days.
I wonder if I even have. I really should have paid more attention when I was taking apart the PC like 3 weeks ago.
No,
But
that's all right.
I mean, I made the jump is like literally having a PC from. I probably bought that in like, or I probably got it. I don't know, 2012 that PC.
Mhm.
So you figure. Also, I didn't help with buying it, and I wasn't too big into computers at the time. It was more just like for something. So you figure it's a Best Buy computer from like Best Buy pre-built in 2012 is a garbage, and then I end up getting like, like a GTX 1060. That makes a big difference.
Right.
Also, I had fans that worked. Those fans were garbage. Um, so like hardware like that just really helps make the game a lot smoother, and then obviously customizing all the settings so that you get the maximum amount of frames, just so that you can see everything accurately.
Yeah.
And
So what hardware are you using right now as far as a graphics card, monitors, stuff like that?
I mean, I don't really think right now I have the GTX 1060, which is great and all. Um, in terms of the monitors, I just have two Samsung monitors. I use dual monitors. It's nothing like crazy. It doesn't have 144 hertz or anything like that. Nothing like outstanding like that.
What is it
Um,
what does it run at?
Good question. I don't have it off the top of my head, so we will have to. Let's get back to this in a moment because I just want to check out one thing because Overwatch actually is just about finished updating. So I just want to check this and then I'll get back to these settings here.
Okay. No problem. Um so now you made the jump in hardware from a computer that was going from, you know, 20 frames per second, which we can both agree is totally unacceptable, to a computer that could actually run the game the way that it's supposed to. One of the things that you mentioned was that you played with all the graphic settings as low as possible. Um, can you explain what advantage that gives you and like why you would want to do something like that if you're playing a competitive first-person shooter game?
I find that typically, again, obviously that the frames mean more than how pretty the game looks overall. I mean, a lot of people turn off different things like the shadowing or how fast objects render. Really, the main things that you want to have, I think, in the settings are just render distance. Usually, not. I mean, it's easy for a game in like Overwatch to set to like max because the maps aren't that large, and then I run everything else at low because not that everything becomes like kind of like polygons, but it's also easier to see where kind of your hit targets are because it's reducing all like the little flare around everything. Instead of like seeing a cape flying through, you might not see the cape, so now you know what a straight body looks like, and you know where to hit if you're playing like something like a
So
hit scan. Like
it gives you a little bit of an advantage because you can actually see the hitbox and just the hitbox as opposed to anything that's coming off the character model's body or things like that. You're just seeing the parts that you need to aim at.
I would argue, yeah.
Okay. No, I tend to agree with you on that. I play with all my Apex settings as low as possible as well because I feel like seeing the extra frames and having the game run way smoother gives you the advantage of not having to be as good at predicting where things are going to be when there's a little bit more like judder, as well as you're able to see just a more basic character model that doesn't distract you from everything else going on. Um, and then I guess that also gives you the disadvantage of anytime you see a skipped frame, you tend to notice it way more abruptly than uh, when you're used to playing at 60 frames.
Yeah. Um, so here, I just loaded up the game just to
Mm-hmm.
see. So just to give you an accurate explaining of how long I played for the first 10 seasons. I have no idea what season it is on now. Um,
Probably pretty friggin' far in past 10
yeah, I mean,
seasons.
but like I said, in the first season, you just had numbers. They didn't do the actual rank system that they do now. So peaked at 59, which I don't remember what the equivalent to that was.
Mm-hmm.
Ended at 55, and then it was just a slow climb. Like season two, I didn't play during three, four. Season two and four, I played plat, and then I just spiked, which is when I actually finally got like a PC. In season five, I finally hit master, and then season six, like I just barely made it into. It was 3525, and I know the minimum is 3500.
Mm-hmm.
In season six, I got a little bit further, 3822. Season seven was my highest. I hit 4241, which is like I was so close to top 500, but just not there.
You're like knocking on the door of
Yeah,
being
knocking
there.
right there just to be, very close, but not exactly. I think like the minimum required at that time was like 4320 or something like that. So I was probably almost like 80 off, but and
And you
then
just couldn't pull it off.
yeah, no, it just because like every other ranked team that you play in any game you play ranked, it's always like you're right there, and then you lose one game and you just go right downhill. Uh, and then yeah, for season 8, 9, and 10, I played and I always ended up in master. Like whenever, oh, is this actually my highest season? No, okay. And then the last season I played, which was season 10, I ended at 4163.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of times that I would play, it was very based on like your previous season and how well you did in your previous season.
Right.
Um, because I remember the first placements I did after I had hit master, I placed right back in a master.
So it's not
So
something like where Apex Legends at the end of each season there's like a soft reset where they force you to climb again. You
correct.
just kind of basically if you qualified last season and you didn't drop too far, um, they just put you right back into the same rank that you were in previously.
For the most part, I would say yes. A lot of it felt like they base it on, I don't know how their MMR system works, like their matchmaking ranking, but
Mm-hmm.
a lot of times it felt like once you were in a tier, it would kind of keep you relative to that tier. Like I never really ended up in lower tiers. I think I'm trying to think. Well, the first season I probably hit master. I think I ended up back in diamond when I finished my placements, even though I did well, like whatever it was, 8 and 2 or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's just a long climb back up. The
Yeah.
joy.
I mean, I will say this. One of the things that like turned me off from Overwatch was, and I came into it much later, um, was the fact that when you're climbing in bronze, there's a lot of people that think that they know better than you and get really, really upset if you don't listen to exactly what they're trying to tell you. And like, they'll start saying some unkind things in chat. It's like, listen, we're all in bronze right now. We all suck at the game. Like, you know, how does that how did you see if that did that change at all as you climbed in the ranks? Like, as far as like diamond and like master and grandmaster and all that, did you see like an attitude shift, or is that common throughout all the different ranks?
I would say that probably the worst rank to be in was plat. I feel like that's the epitome of we think we're really good at the game, but it's just our teammates holding us back that are not allowing us to progress further. Um, so I was just saying, so I guess the bottom that I started at was plat. So I would say that was probably the worst and most difficult climb out of there because everyone seems to believe that they're way better than that. So they don't need to work as a team, even though it's a team based game.
Yeah, I mean it's even more
And
of a team-based game than like Apex is because even though Apex tries to force you into teams, if you're someone like Asu, you can 1v3 the entire lobby.
yeah,
You can't do that in Overwatch.
no. And also, I played before. They've introduced other techniques now, like there's role queues, similar to like if you play like an MMO RPG, like something like World of Warcraft, where if you want to tank, you're in a tank queue. So they do the 2-2-2 format. So two tanks, two DPS, two support.
So you're
So that
forced
wasn't,
into that.
well, you choose which one you want to do, and then yeah, you're forced into those roles because that's what you queued up to do.
Right, but in
So
other words, for example, the last time I played, everybody could choose DPS if they wanted to.
yeah, exactly.
Now
So
you're forced into a 2-2-2 team comp.
yeah,
Um, oh, I just got something in my eye.
but yeah,
So
so
how
obviously,
do you which one do you think is better?
I mean, when you have a full team and you guys are all working together, it's obviously better to just have freedom over what you want to choose. Because if you're doing, I mean, I don't know what the comps are anymore. I mean, it's been a while, but obviously, like dive, you could just do three healers and basically two tanks and one DPS, or you can do. It depends on just how you want to roll it. I mean, now I guess it's better because it's kind of format. It's kind of in a format now, but I think it works better for solo queuing because it's just annoying when you get into a team. Like I was a support main, so I don't like being a support main is not fun when everyone else thinks that there's some amazing hit scan that belong in top 500, and so everyone's just gonna pick McCree, uh,
Widowmaker.
Sarger, yeah,
Yeah.
Soldier 76, Widowmaker. I have to think about it. And then you have like the one guy who's going to be like, oh, okay, you guys are going to force me to tank. All right, I'll play one tank. And then they end up picking like um, Winston, which doesn't work with like the comp. And it's just like, there's like a whole bunch of like annoyances with like solo queuing. So I kind of think it's better that it forces into a 2-2-2.
Right.
That's just me.
So one of the other things that like was a huge problem in bronze is that nobody communicates. Does that ever change? Like, is there ever a point in the ranking where you hit plat or diamond or master, grandmaster, whatever, that the team actually communicates on comms, or is it always if you're not playing with your friends or if you're not playing with a pre-made, uh, it's kind of like you just go with the flow. Nobody's really talking to each other, nothing like that.
I found that once you got into probably like mid tier masters to like the upwards of high master is when mostly everyone talks on comms. Like you get here and there in masters in general, like on the lower end side, close to the diamond, but definitely mid master into grandmaster, everyone talks. Also, that was the point where I was running into like a lot of people who streamed competitive Overwatch, like who were actually typically top 500. So they're used to talking, so they just do it. Like it wasn't that difficult to find people because at that point everyone just wants to work as a team, and also everyone kind of knows their roles because everyone got up to that point probably by solo queuing for the most part or duo queuing at, at minimum or at most. Usually people don't play with full teams because the way that the way that I remember the system working is that if you played against a full team, you'd always go against like an actual team, like another full set of team, and it just wasn't beneficial. Like
So
unless you were on a
if
competitive
you
team.
right, so if you went in as a full team, like a full pre-made, they only matched you against other pre-mades.
I would say like 9 out of 10 times. And if it wasn't a full, it was a 5-man team and one solo.
I didn't know that. So then, what would happen if you? I don't know if you even know this. What would happen if you were in one of the lower ranks and went in as a full team? Would they end up putting you up against the higher ranks, or because they couldn't find a match for you?
There were times where, yeah, if you play as a full team, like when the beginning seasons when I had people who were playing the game and we played a full season, or we played a full season together and we would queue as a full team, we could be in, we could all be in plat, but because there's
Right,
no other full teams until like Diamond Master, you're just going to get a Diamond Master team that comes in and swoops you.
right.
So it
So
was, go ahead.
no. I want to hear what you were going to say first.
Just that it was more beneficial, I found, to one, play solo, or if you're going to play with somebody, play duo. But I didn't really have anybody to. I'd rather just solo because support mains only ever seem to find other support mains, and when everyone's a support main, no one knows how to hit scan. So
So it's
that's
basically like you're playing again, playing, and all you know how to do is heal each other.
yeah. I mean, I used to play Zen, so I was fine with doing. I mean, I play whatever. I always say I fill, but
Mm,
I preferred Zen most of the time because people want to communicate. You end up playing Mercy solo because apparently you only need one healer, and she used to be super OP. But when I got up into the higher ranks, it was much easier to just play Zen because someone would also play a second healer. I mean, you kind of work around getting better at everyone in your kind of
in your
class because, like,
world.
obviously you don't want to play like when Sombra came out. Zen wasn't that great because she basically could one clip you. So you
Hmm.
would end up playing like Merciana or whatever. And when stuff like that happens, and when you get to higher ranks, everyone kind of knows their roles. Everyone kind of knows like what the comp is trying to be. Like, you know, you also play with a lot of the same people
Right.
because
There's only so many people in those ranks.
exactly. So at that point, you kind of know what they mean. It's like the same with Apex. I'm sure when you get to Predator,
Right.
people play the
But
same.
so I think that there's a big difference in what it takes to get to Predator, or at least I have a hunch that there's a big difference in what it takes to get to Predator versus what it would take to get to Grandmaster or top 500 in Overwatch because of the fact that Overwatch is so much more team based. How do you overcome that when you're solo queuing? Especially like Apex has, even if you don't want to talk on the comms, they've got a really extensive ping system that allows you to communicate with your team without having to really communicate with your voice. You can just either use the text chat or you can use the ping system, which is almost as effective as actually speaking to the person. So how are you able to get past that in a game that doesn't have a system like that and isn't built for a system like that and is so heavy on working together?
I think you become a shot caller. So regardless if your team doesn't want to communicate with you, as long as they follow what you're saying, it's much easier that way. So I used to call out like alts, like, oh, whatever, Ryan just ulted here, he shattered. Call out enemy ults, call out your team ults, try to get them to be on board with you. Even if you're making the wrong calls, at least everyone's following a pattern. They're all trying to follow somebody else making the call. Like sometimes you wouldn't have people who want to communicate, but as long as you're communicating and putting the information out there, like, oh,
They'll
this
listen to
person's
you.
gone, everyone push. And especially like if you're support, like I would play like Zen. So I would tell them when I'm using my alt so that they would push forward,
Right.
obviously. So like things like that. So you would make a lot more shots, call a lot more things out, tell them like when to go, when to pull back. Hopefully you would assume that they want to try to win the game too, and they're not just a bunch of trolls. But that's what I found to help a lot more when I was in the lower ranks and like people wouldn't talk. At worst, it does is someone will go on there and then pretend like they're a better shot caller, and then you just follow what they do and hope that it works.
So basically what you're saying is if you're in the lower ranks and you're struggling to climb, you have to take the initiative to make sure that you're communicating with the team, that you're kind of pushing the team to do one action all together in unison, as
Yeah,
opposed to kind of waiting for someone else to take control of it. What else do you
exactly.
think differentiates being able to climb through the ranks in a game like that?
I think like I understand where people would say that something like Overwatch is a lot harder because it's a smaller because it's really just one versus another. It's two teams pit against each other, right? So you're always going to either win or lose. That's it. I find it's much easier to just kind of control that circumstance if the people that you're playing with are willing to change. Because obviously, if someone's playing McCree or something, they're supposed to be your hit scan and they can't hit jack shit. But you can convince them to switch to a tank and let one of the tanks switch there and change your format of the team. It helps a lot more. Like once you're in Apex, you're stuck. If this guy is terrible on whatever hero he picked because he AFK'd on the loading screen, like you guys are shit out of luck. And
Well, yeah, but at the same time, the the hero choice in Apex has a a much lower impact on how the game plays out and how you have to move as a team than it does in Overwatch. Like I feel like in Overwatch, it's super important that your team comp works together and works well together, as opposed to if somebody picks a random Bloodhound or a random now Pathfinder. Uh, it's you could still work around that pretty easily, as long as they've got good aim. And the aim isn't really going to change with what character they're using. How do you convince people in Overwatch to actually switch characters without pissing them off?
I mean, most of the time people would know, like obviously if they have something like let's say like a fair or something like that, and you know that they're just missing all of their shots because we just keep getting barrage like every 2 minutes. They're obviously not helping out. So either you can try and tell them like, listen, can you switch to a tank? Let someone else try it. Obviously, whatever it is not working. We're not all trying to lose. I mean, they can either follow that or then you just hard counter the other team. And instead of
What does that mean? To hard
so let's
counter
say
them?
if you know that their strongest, I mean, not even that people play fair anymore, but let's just say that their strongest player on their team seems to be Farah, and we don't have an accurate hit scan. So you might do 3 DPS, one tank, two heals, just so that that person has to change heroes off of Farah, so that we force them to change because there's too many hit scans, so they can't do jack shit. So you hard counter one person on the other team, even if your guy's not really helping you with that.
Right.
It just so that you're forcing them to change their team comp, and then you can kind of go back to your original team comp because then maybe it'll work better.
So in other words, what you're saying is that if the person on your team doesn't want to switch, you pick whoever is the strongest on the other team, convince everybody else to hard counter that person, and hope that the person that wouldn't switch kind of goes with the plan.
Yeah, because I mean, if they're just going to play McCree and not switch for anybody, then it doesn't really matter if we swap off one tank to go like Soldier 76 if you know he can hit scan, because then at least he's completely countering that person. You might have two hit scan now and one less tank, but at least you're not getting like team wiped at every fight.
Right.
So you hard counter that person. Maybe they swap off a Farah, and then once they swap off a Farah, then you can go back to a second tank and then proceed because the guy who's going to refuse to change for the team comp is going to refuse no matter what. So you might as well at least not ignore him, but try to
But ignore him.
try to make the adjustments without needing him then.
Right. So you're trying to almost force the other team to make the original comp work for your team.
Yeah.
Okay. That
But I
makes
mean, I find
sense.
like Apex, like just in terms of when we were talking earlier about it, I find it a little bit harder to climb because it's it's just so dependent on like a lot of variables. Like who else is in your lobby with you? There's also, you know, 19 other teams of you. Also, where do you drop? Like, there's just so many other different factors that add to whether or not you think you're going to win or lose. I mean, obviously, if you're just good at the game, it doesn't really matter what guns you have or whatever, because if your hit scan's on point, it's on point. But
Well, I will say this. I agree with you on a few of those things, especially with in terms of who's in your lobby. Because if you end up, and this has happened to me, I know it's happened to you, where you drop into a lobby in gold or silver and you queue in with a top 50 Predator pre-made team, you know you're basically screwed for that match. And whatever RP you were hoping on gaining, um, it's not going to happen if you run it. Like if you just so happen to drop with that team, which you try to avoid, you're kind of screwed. How did that work with? Did they have anything in place for Overwatch to prevent something like that happening?
it was similar to how Apex does it now, where you can only play with a certain amount of tiers above you or below you. But again, with like that team system, it would take like a general, because you had SR. It was, that's how they measure the actual rank in Overwatch. So like your SR is like, let's just say you're in Master, so it's like 3600 or something like that. Now I play with you. Let's say you're in Diamond, you're 3200. So us together is like 36 or 35, right?
Right.
So you could do that with whole teams though, because sometimes I told you earlier how like people would 6-man queue. If you 6-man queue and you guys are all on the same tier, it kind of works out a little bit because at least they have to be within. I think it was like, I want to say within 1,000 SR of each other, like either way. So like if you're all in plat, technically you shouldn't be able to play with people who are in master or all the way in like bronze or something. But
So when they look at the SR number, are they looking at the combined team number, or are they looking at all of the individuals have to be within 1,000 of each other? Or is it the team
it's
comp has to be within 1,000 of whoever they're matched with?
both. So each individual person has to be within 1,000 of all of each other. So they all have to be able to play with each other. Then once
Right.
they queue, it's supposed to match up with someone also within 1,000 up or below them. But like weird things can happen. So like I remember when I would play at like weird times, like if you play at like 3 in the morning when there's like no one playing in your tier group, it's gonna queue you against people, but put you on a weird. So like one of my team comps, even though it wasn't supposed to, like I think I was in Grandmaster at one point. I'm like 4,100. I got put on a team with like a bunch of diamonds because they needed one person to boost their SR
Right.
so that they could fight another team that was all like mid-tier masters. And it's just like, so like stuff like that will happen. Like
So when something like that happens and you get matched with a bunch of people that are below you in a game like Apex, that actually helps you. In a game like Overwatch, that could cost you Grandmaster,
yeah,
right?
it hurts a lot if you lose, because especially if you lose the people who are like, it almost feels, at least from what I felt, it felt like if you lost to people whose team SR was like lower than yours, you would lose a lot more SR.
Right.
And then like when you're gaining SR, it's, you don't like in Apex,
It's a set
it's a
system.
set. It's a set amount, like in the sense of like you know what you have to be in whatever tier you are is the negative that you have to overcome, and then based on that is what the points are you can get. Like in Overwatch, it's very like dependent on a lot of different factors, like how you do in the game, I guess. But it was always you would play, whatever 10 games. Let's say you win all 10 games. All right, cool. You went up like 50 SR because you're so much already on top
Hmm.
at the like peak in like Grandmaster top 500, and then when you lose a game, it's like, oh, okay, cool. The 10 games it took you to get 50, you just lost that in one game.
That's brutal. At least in a game like Apex, you know, okay, for each kill to get into the lobby, it's going to cost me this much RP. And for every kill I get, I'm going to get this much RP. If I finish in, whatever placement it is, it's the multiplier is that. Like there's a system where you can kind of know uh, if you should be continue to be aggressive because you need to get more RP, or if you can back off and kind of play a little bit more passive, um, because you're safe and like, okay, at this point I've already broken even. Now it's just a matter of being higher in placement and things like that. Which system do you prefer? I guess let's start with which game do you prefer, and then which way of gaining points do you prefer?
I mean, I guess it's unfair to say now because I play Apex right now and I don't play Overwatch, so I'd say I prefer Apex at the moment. But
Well, okay, so let's change the context a little bit. Each game at their peak of you playing them, which one do you think you liked more, and why?
I would probably actually say Overwatch in the general sense. I liked it when there wasn't so much clutter going on. With all like the new heroes and everything like that, I feel like it's a lot of different things going on and a lot of different variables that just like there's just a lot more to account for. Like when there's so many heroes at a point, it just becomes a little difficult to keep track of everything. In the same sense of like if you ever play like League of Legends, like it got to a point that I felt there was a lot of heroes or a lot of champions that you could choose that just makes it
Cluttered.
it just adds a lot. And it's not like there's anything wrong with it. It's just like not the type like I like it to kind of almost be set. Like I told you before, like I used to play a lot of Counter Strike. So I like things that kind of stay the same. Like I like a change up every now and then, but I like things that are mostly consistent. And I feel like it's almost better with Apex because since it takes so long for a new champion to come out, it's like one a season ish. So
Yeah, I think
that
it actually has been one. I think the preseason they added Octane or Mirage, and then season. Oh no, yeah, no. Season one they added Octane, and then season two was Watson, then Crypto, Revenant, and now we're at Loba.
yeah, I feel like it's more evenly spaced out. Overwatch is like adding characters very quickly, and
Yeah, it
now the
also
game feels like very cluttered.
yeah, and it also changes the meta very quickly. Like just as you're getting used to something, um, now all of a sudden everything has to change very rapidly.
Yeah,
Do you think that there's ever going to be a point where Apex is too cluttered with different legends that you're not going to know how to counter, and you're going to miss the days of just having, 10 legends, 9 legends in the
I
game?
think it could. I mean, if it goes on as long as I mean, right now it's at a year. If it goes
Mm.
on, I mean, Overwatch has been probably out for maybe like I'm still working this job, probably like 3 years at least. So you
I think it's
figure
been longer than that, hasn't it?
maybe four.
I think it was. I think it's probably closer to 4 at this point.
Yeah, you're right. Four came out May 24th, 2016. So, and then you see what they're doing now. If you saw BlizzCon, is that they're releasing Overwatch 2,
Yeah, but isn't that just going to be a rehash of the same game?
basically. But I'm just saying, like, it gets to a point where you kind of need to start over again and then just
Right.
start with like the original cast and just keep that. I mean, I think it could get to that at like a point, but again, it would take like years, and who knows, it will still be like relevant by then. I think it also makes it difficult because the more heroes you add in there, I guess it's better because again, you're playing against 20 squads, so it's nice to have a varied amount different. But then also you figure like with every season of Apex, it's been like the main staple that there are must pick legends or must pick champions that you have to do.
Yeah.
Like
There.
Wraith has not been out of it since ever.
Right.
Like
Well, but that I feel like they've been trying to kind of knock her out of it based on, the low profile buff, then they or the low
I mean they
profile
nerf her
nerf.
a lot, but
Yeah.
again, like they just finally I mean, this is season 5 and they just got rid of Pathfinder basically.
Yeah. Although there's a rumor now that they're going to lower the cooldown from 35 to 25.
I think they should have done that in the first place, but
Yeah, I think 35 is pretty excessive.
it
I mean, that's
just
the same as Wraith's Into the Void, where um, you basically can use that ability once per fight, and that's it. And if you get third party, you're screwed.
yeah.
Um, although I've been playing a lot of Loba, I really think that her play style is really good, and it was kind of underhyped in comparison to Revenant, where Revenant you thought was going to be this really like instantly shake up the meta and everybody's going to want to play him. And he was like, unfortunately, very underwhelming, in my opinion, because there's not a huge, especially now, actually, with the Pathfinder nerf, it kind of nerfs the fact that if you silence Pathfinder and he's already used the grapple, you've done nothing but deal 10 damage.
Yeah.
Same thing with a Wraith. If you get them mid fight, even though he's got 2 charges and they've buffed him a bit, I feel like Loba's abilities are really, they were kind of underhyped, and I feel like they over delivered on her a bit, because even though you got that huge, like everybody can see when you're teleporting, and she's basically like a rebranded Sombra.
Yeah.
I really like playing her. I really like the play style that comes with her, and I feel like that's the first legend since Watson that they've been able to drop in the game and instantly people want to play her. And there's like okay, I understand why this is a legend that I need to be playing right now, as opposed to someone like Crypto, where it takes a lot more nuance and a lot more, like there's a much higher skill floor to be effective with that character, as opposed to a Wraith or what Pathfinder used to be or what Loba is now. I kind of feel bad for Lifeline though, because she's getting slowly pushed further and further out of the meta.
Yeah, I mean, I enjoy the Mirage buffs, and I agree with you that Loba is kind of like, she's viable. That's what I'll say. Like when Revenant came out, he was not viable.
Right.
He's like kind of peaking on viable now. I mean, people play him. I still don't see him much on like ranked. I don't know if you do, but not really.
I don't think I've ever seen him in a ranked match.
Yeah,
I don't think I've ever seen him in a ranked. Let me take that back. I've seen him in ranked, but not
like top 5.
right. Like I after you make it past gold 3, I stop seeing him.
Yeah. So Loba, though, I can see like the appeal, and I can see how she's really viable because in endgame, it's just great. It doesn't matter if they know where you are with an ult. If
Right.
you could, if
Because
they
they
just
already
wipe
know
the
where you
team.
are.
Yeah. If it's the top 5 squads left, and one team just wiped them and used their black market, and you're within range, even though they might know where you are, you just stole all the
Yeah.
loot that they just got off of them, like in the sense of like maybe the shield or stuff like that. So you can kind of just
Also, too, I don't know if you saw this, but there have been a few videos circulating of people that have kind of camped supply drops. And the minute the supply drop opens, they
yeah, I've
take
seen
all the
that.
high tier weapons, which really puts the people. Now, that there's people at the supply drop, and you've got the weapons that they were trying to get, and they don't really know where you are yet if you drop the ult early enough.
Yeah, I mean, so I definitely see like the appeal of her. I was gonna say too with the Mirage buffs, like he definitely needed them. He was a fun
Yeah.
character, but he was very weak in comparison to everyone else. I
Yeah.
think they're really fun, the buffs.
Oh, for sure.
But I mean, as you probably saw too, when you're rezzing now, you get cloak.
Yeah, that's actually pretty big because
Yeah,
you can res essentially out in the open and nobody knows you're there.
yeah. I mean, between your ult going on and everything like that, and your ult charges up much faster now.
Yeah, it's like
Between doing that and then,
they buffed Octane too with his ult too. It charges in 60
oh, I
seconds,
haven't
right?
even played him.
I haven't played him in a very long time either, but I'm pretty sure they buffed his ult so that it charges in 60 seconds now.
Okay. But as you were saying, like Lifeline just kind of got pushed to the side. This was like way bigger. Like I mean, between Gibraltar getting the faster res in the bubble and Mirage getting the invis while he reses, it's just
Yeah.
way more it's just so much better than Lifeline just using the shield.
Especially because with Lifeline, you have to be able to, like, you have to think to position yourself very specifically before you start rezzing someone to make sure that the shield is even in a position to do any good for you.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're inside the bubble, as long as you're inside the bubble and they're on the outside of the bubble, it doesn't matter. And it's
And
the
I mean,
same amount of
obviously,
time.
you can use it as the gimmick where you keep popping the shield just so that they at least waste bullets on you. Where you keep resing and then canceling, resing, canceling.
Oh, for Lifeline.
Yeah, but I mean, even that's not like, I mean, it's strong, but it's not like I would
You've
rather
got to
get
be
some other
good.
benefit. Yeah, it's really annoying.
Yeah, I feel like that's a lot harder to pull off than a res within the bubble or something like that. And I feel like most people can't pull something like that off, and it's only viable in certain situations.
Yeah.
So, but yeah. So, which system do you prefer as far as the ranked?
What do you mean, like on PC?
No. Well, actually, we can get into that too. But which way of accumulating points do you prefer? Overwatch or
Oh,
Apex?
I would say I want to say like Apex, but like the small little downsides that I have with it too is because you know how it works. People are obviously going to try to abuse that. People who, I mean, they still do it, but people just hiding until you get to like the top 10 or whatever like that.
Right.
I'm not saying, you got to go jump. I mean, obviously Skull Town's not here anymore, but I'm not saying everybody drops Skull Town and you have to prove your worth in the first 5 seconds. But like you'll have teams that specifically just to rotate so that they're not anywhere near an engage or fight. I mean, I guess that's smart playing, but it just seems
You know
like
what?
kind of like
I
I don't
gotta
like playing those games.
I don't like playing those games either. And I gotta say, one of the things that I've noticed is that, and I hadn't thought about it until we played in the tournament at PAX, but you'd mentioned it afterwards, and you said, one of the problems that we had with the second and third game is that we didn't see anybody until we were basically being killed. Even though we were totally looted up, we were like ready to go. Theoretically, we had all the advantage we needed to take a fight, but we hadn't killed yet.
Yeah,
And I feel like it's, maybe it's just psychological, but once you get some momentum going, I feel like the games that I've had the highest kills on are the games that, you don't necessarily, you drop like hot adjacent.
yeah,
So
I
there's
agree with
like
that.
one other team there and you get a gun right away, even if you take the fight and it's not like the best fight, but you win. And then all of a sudden you carry this momentum through to the rest of the games and you can play super aggressively. And it's almost like you've got like the hand of God pushing you behind that, like you're able to take on all these fights and win, even when you really shouldn't be able to. And then I feel like in games where you drop and nobody's around you, and then all of a sudden, you're in the top 5, but you haven't seen a single other team yet. It's hard to win those games because you haven't gotten any momentum going behind you.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I feel it's much easier too when you first take on a squad and you win the fight and then to go further because it feels like at least you have something done.
Especially
To
in
me, it
ranked.
feels like, I mean, I play whatever. I play casual games before I play ranked anyway, just to warm up. But it also lets me know like where I'm aiming at. Like sometimes, I like to pick up the wingman because I just have to now. But
Every
sometimes
time it
like,
gets pinged, you have to pick it up.
yeah, exactly. So like I'll play it and like today I was playing with it. I was destroying people with it today. But I feel like if I go into a game in a ranked game and I'm like, all right, I'm gonna pick up the wingman, and then like I don't see anybody until the top 5, I'm gonna miss
Every single
95% of
shot.
my shots.
Yeah.
And then I'm just like, well, that's great. At least if like you fight a team and you're like, oh, okay, I missed 95% of my shots, I'm gonna get rid of this. Because at
Right.
least if when you engage people, it to me it feels like it helps me figure out where my aim's at for the match. Like if I feel like I'm on point, or if I feel like I'm gonna sit back and try and snipe people because I'm not trying to fight that close.
Right. What do you think of the Mastiff being a floor weapon now?
Oh, I love it. I destroy people with that thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I find it way easier for whatever reason than the Peacekeeper. I don't know what it is, but
I know what it is. The Peacekeeper hits, even though the Peacekeeper had a spread, you're still aiming at something like this, as opposed to if you can hit the plane of where that person is, at least one or two of those pellets is gonna connect. Um, and I feel like the spread is better for you don't necessarily you just have to get the elevation right. You don't
Yeah,
necessarily have to get the aim right.
yeah. I just feel like it was much. I liked it. I enjoy it being the. I use it all the time now. If I ever
Yeah.
run shotgun, I run shotgun on like I would say I don't know 7 out of 10 of my games now. I use the Mastiff.
Hmm. I haven't played since they fixed the hit registration because um, I got super frustrated
Yeah,
few games in a
it
row.
was.
I was like point blank with the Mastiff and none of the hits right. Like, don't get me wrong, I've got terrible aim, but point blank, multiple shots into the person, and you see their shield light up, but they don't get any damage. I was like, okay, I'm not even going to play until this is fixed because I'm just going to make myself angry. I'm going to have to check it out again. Um, and since we're slowly approaching the time that we both have to be off, now that your Pathfinder has been nerfed, who's your favorite legend?
I'm still figuring it out. I mean, Pathfinder was my boy. I love playing any type of robot characters in most of the games that I play. Like I
So does
told you,
that
I
mean
was a
you're going to
Zen
switch to
main.
Revenant now?
No, God no. I don't like him. I don't like Revenant. That's for sure. I haven't played Path since day one of season 5, but I've been playing like a lot of Bangalore, uh, which I don't know. Even though I think are all just trash because it's so easy to avoid.
Well, it's
It's
really
really
not meant to cause. I feel like it's not meant to cause damage. It's just meant to stop a push or give you time to get away because you know that if it starts going off, you're gonna like they do cause damage if you get caught in it.
yeah. I mean, it's good for like preventing circle, like forcing a team to go one way because you drop the ult that way.
Right.
Like also, you just totally went out of focus.
Yeah, I don't know what just happened. Hold on. Oh,
There
there
you
we
go.
go. Don't know why that just happened.
Yeah, I mean that Mirage. Mirage is just super fun to play now. Even though I think I suck at him, he's just fun.
Well,
You
I
just
mean
bamboozle
that's
people all day. It's so much fun.
yeah, that's a big part of the game is just being able to have fun with it too. Because like I found when I was playing Wraith like really super seriously, even though I was still having fun because I was winning, I wasn't just kind of like, like, this is so much more fun. Like just kind of like you don't there are certain characters that when you play them, even though you may not be as effective, they're just a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I feel like Mirage is one of those characters.
I also
Um,
am like mostly a support main, so like
so
any
you're gonna
game that I
lifeline,
play, I always like to play support, but it's really hard right now to play support because
but you could
Lifeline
always
is kind of trash.
you
Pathfinder is definitely trash.
could Jibby.
I always consider him. I guess yeah. I guess him and like Watson are supports, but I always consider them more like tanks.
You consider
Even though,
Watson a tank?
yeah,
Really? Why?
even though she doesn't get the bonus, I find that her whole setup is just about barricading a place, and that's just like that's why I would think of her as like more of a tank. Like she reminds me of Winston from Overwatch. Like he's not really a tank, but he is.
Mhm.
So
All right.
because I would consider him like I guess she should be fine as a support, but I consider too like the movement speed. Like I think supports should have like a bonus movement speed in a
Mhm.
sense of like that's what Path was. I mean, Lifeline's not like faster, but obviously she's faster than if you're playing Caustic,
Right.
Gibby, or Watson.
Well, that depends on how you want to look at it because she's actually not. The base movement speed for all the legends is exactly the same.
Oh,
The
I guess they feel
animations,
faster.
well, yeah. So the animations for Caustic, Gibby, and
Watson.
now Watson feels faster, but Caustic and Gibby feel like they're slower. But there are a lot of videos out there that show that all the legends movements, basic movement speeds, are exactly the same. Their movement speeds with guns out is exactly the same. with the exception of when Octane uses his stim, um, and when Wraith uses her portal, she gets
Okay.
a movement boost. Everything
I didn't
else,
know that.
yeah, the animations are just the animation timing and the sounds, because they're taller, larger characters, they have to take less steps, so it feels like you're moving more slowly. But
Huh.
if you were to pull up the in-game stats, everybody has, I think it's a base movement speed of 200.
Okay.
Um, everybody has it,
I did
which
not
is
know that.
interesting. But the fact that Octane used to be able to use the grapple to grapple a huge distance much more quickly, then slide, then jump, then slide again, made him actually move faster because he wasn't running.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, so you've been leaning on Bangalore mostly now.
Yeah. I like Bangalore a lot because I always seem to find like a digital threat and then you just
Yeah, then it makes a lot of
poke and then
sense,
it's just so much fun.
right? Because then they can't see you.
Exactly.
So, well, I appreciate you taking some more time out and hanging out for a bit,
No problem.
and enjoy the rest of your evening.
You as well.